It's 9 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started with today's meeting. Welcome to the November 25th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Recommendations from the Planning Commission on items from this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting on December 3rd, 2019 at 10:30 a.m. Another note that the Planning Commission utilizes the speaker request forms, which are available at the back of the room there on the table and can be submitted to Jason up front here. First item is roll call. Note that Sunny is gone today and Deb is here from the board. First item on the agenda is approval of the November 12th, 2019 minutes. Are there any changes, corrections, modifications to the minutes? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 2 is approval of the agenda. The agenda consists of items 3 through 8 in the consent agenda and 9 through 19 outside of the consent agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to the consent agenda. PJ.
Good morning, Commissioners. PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. Items before you on the consent agenda. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of the Planning Commission are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners and make the final decisions. Item 3, Conditional Use Permit Review 1722 for Pamela Phillips to review a single-wide mobile home to be used as a permanent single-family residence on the subject property in a suburban residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of Conditional Use Permit 1722 with 8 conditions. Item 4, Conditional Use Permit Review 1737 for Ken and Nancy Denke to review the use of a camper as temporary living quarters not to exceed 180 days in the calendar year on the subject property in the General Agriculture District. Staff recommends approval of the extension of Conditional Use Permit 1737 with 11 conditions. Item 5, Conditional Use Permit Review 1841 for Andrew Foley to review a single-wide mobile home to be used as a single-family residence on the subject property in the General Agriculture District. Staff recommends to end Conditional Use Permit 1841 with the applicant's concurrence as it is no longer needed. Item 6, Major Plan Unit Development Amendment Review 1801 for Deerfield Cabins, LLC, Dion Wina as the owner, to review an existing plan unit development to allow the existing single-family residence on Lot 43 to be used as a vacation home rental. Staff recommends approval of the extension of Major Plan Unit Development Amendment 1801 with 22 conditions. Item 7, Mining Permit 1901 for Dakota Stone Mining and Stone Supply, James Dean is the owner, to drill and blast for production of building stone and gravel to be hauled off-site. Staff recommends approval of Mining Permit 1901 with 8 conditions. Item 8, Mining Permit 1902 for Pete Lean and Sons to expand an existing sand and gravel mining operation on the subject property. Staff recommends approval of Mining Permit 1902 with 10 conditions.
Thanks, PJ. Are there any items that staff wishes to pull from the consent agenda?
No, sir.
Are there any items that the membership wishes to pull from the consent agenda? Are there any items from anybody in the audience that they wish to pull from the consent agenda? I would remind the folks in the audience that the consent agenda will be voted on with one vote, so that includes items 3 through 8. I would like to pull item number 8 from the consent agenda.
Move approval of consent agenda with the exception of number 8.
Motion for approval of consent agenda with the exception of item number 8.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. My reason for pulling number 8 from the consent agenda is a conflict of interest, so I'll be abstaining from item number 9, or item number 8, because I work there. I would also note as a correction that the approval is with 10 conditions, but in the report, I believe there was only 9.
Motion to approve with one abstention. Rich?
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on item number 8. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? No. Motion carries with my abstention. I think I said aye there in the microphone. Out of habit. Sorry about that.
You said no. You're good.
All right. That brings us to item number 9 on the agenda.
Item number 9 is conditional use permit 1901 to allow a vacation home rental on the subject property in a low-density residential district. The applicant is NMMC Incorporated. Terry Saylor is the owner and is 4.74 acres. This is an existing single-family residence which the owner applied for a conditional use permit to have a vacation home rental back in earlier this year. Since that time, we have been in constant contact with either the local, well, depending on who the local contact is, it has changed over time. But we still have yet to receive all the required information that we need. Most recently was within the last week, we've been in contact with the agent who is okay with staff's recommendation that is forthcoming, which is staff recommends conditional use permit 1901 be denied without prejudice.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Could you just briefly explain to me what black water versus gray water, brown water, or whatever it is?
For brown water?
Well, brown. I can't
My
remember
understanding
the
is the
other
black,
color.
my understanding is the black water comes out of the septic systems and the gray water is like from dishes and washing your hands, stuff like that.
I see. Thank you. I just didn't know.
Any further questions on item number 9? Anybody from the audience wish to comment on item number 9? Seeing none, staff is recommending that conditional use permit CU 19-01 be denied without prejudice. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on the item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to item 10.
Mr.
Good
Chairman,
morning, Christine.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I just want to say that I'm going to recuse myself from item 10. My husband and I are landowners within the 500 feet of this property. And, well, I'm not sure that really represents a conflict. I just think it's clearer if I recuse myself from the discussion and the vote.
Noted. Thanks, Kathy. Go ahead.
Good morning, Christina Proetti, County Planner. Item number 10 is conditional use permit 1929. The applicants, Chad and Nancy Reber, who I believe are in the audience today, have requested to allow for a contractor's equipment storage yard in an existing pole barn on the subject property to be utilized as storage for equipment, material, and supplies in conjunction with the contractor's business. Reber Sanitation does have a main office located at 300 Creek Drive in Rapid City, where I believe day-to-day business is conducted. Our understanding is that the subject property in discussion today is to be used as a satellite storage yard for the main office. The existing lot is currently zoned as limited agriculture district with about 11.23 acres. The section 206C22, which is limited agriculture district, states that a contractor's equipment storage yard is a permitted use upon approval of a conditional use permit. And section 103 under definitions defines a contractor's equipment storage yard to be a facility for the storage of equipment, material, and supplies used in conjunction with a contractor's business, excuse me. All right, some considerations for conditional use permits. One, we were going to say the effect upon the use and and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity may be affected if conditional use permit 1929 is approved. September 24th, staff received a complaint letter stating that loud vehicles start up very early in the morning with bright lights, causing children to lose sleep on a regular basis. So possibly implementing quiet hours and ensuring that equipment is properly stored inside the pole barn structure may help mitigate some of these concerns. Staff cannot predict the impact and use, the impact the use may have on property values in the surrounding areas. Number two, it appears that by allowing this conditional use permit, the use should not affect the normal orderly development or improvement of the surrounding or vacant property in the area. 3, the proposed continued use of the contractor's equipment storage yard should not require any additional utilities or facilities that are not already in place. Also, access is to be provided off of North Elkville Road, and staff has no drainage concerns relating specifically to the applicant's request at this time. Number 4, Pennington County Zoning Ordinance 310 AET for minimum off-street parking requirements requires parking or storage for all vehicles used directly in conduct of such industrial use, plus 1 parking space for every 3 employees on the premise at maximum employment on a single shift. November 21st, 2019, staff confirmed with Nancy Reber via phone call that on average there are 4 garbage trucks and 1 roll-off truck leaving the premise daily. Assuming a maximum of 2 crew members for each truck, Reber Sanitation would need 4 parking spaces for their employees. Staff confirms that there is adequate parking for employees located at the pole barn structure. And number 5. It does appear that current measures are not being taken to control offensive odor, dust, fumes, noise, vibration, and lighting, which is inclusive of lighted signs, so that none of the surrounding items will constitute a nuisance. The applicants should take measures to ensure that surrounding neighbors are not affected by any of the above-mentioned elements and amounts that would constitute a nuisance. Currently on the property, there's 1 single-family residence, one barn, 1 pole barn with a bathroom, and 1 chicken coop. Again, access exists off of North Elkville Road, and there is special flood hazard area on the subject property. September 29th, County Ordinance Enforcement received a letter of complaint from nearby neighbors stating that loud vehicles start up very early in the morning with bright lights, causing children to lose sleep on a regular basis, which is what brought this to staff's attention. So with this, there are no other items of concern for the property, and staff is recommending approval with 10 conditions.
Go ahead.
Yep, just to follow up, condition number 7, we're anticipating some discussion with. I was just talking with the landowners. Because this is such a unique operation, normal county quiet hours that we would traditionally put on conditional use permits like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. don't necessarily work for the type of operation and business that they have. So we're anticipating a conversation, and the applicants are here today to discuss this conditional use permit.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
I just have one. So
Go
what
ahead,
time
Cindy.
do they start up? I mean, 5 a.m., 6 a.m.?
Depends on the day. I would, good question for the Rebers.
Yeah, what's their business?
It's a sanitation company, Reber Sanitation. This is kind of like a satellite holding area for some of their trucks. Their main hub's out of Rapid.
So the owners will answer that question for me?
I can answer. I know sometimes it's 3:30 in the morning, sometimes it's 4 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
They can tell
Thank
more.
you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Further questions for staff?
Do we have any solutions for them?
Other than not having the business on the property or starting later in the day, which seems counterintuitive for a sanitation company. The only solution we can have or come up with is have a discussion here and find a solution today.
Those vehicles, is it because they're driving down the road or they're just starting up at that time, or is it both that you're hearing the complaints? Meaning, do they have a place to store their vehicles where they can start them and then take off? And
Yeah, my understanding is it's just the starting of the vehicles. Haven't heard anything about the driving down. The other one was about the lights, but that one has been taken care of.
okay.
Okay,
Question.
go ahead, Jim.
How close is this to other residences? As far, it doesn't appear to be close to very many other residences, but
That's a fairly open area out there.
yes, it appears to be, and it's on country.
It's out by country
Yeah.
road.
Yeah,
kind of.
north of country.
Any further questions before we go to speaker request forms?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I know Jim just asked this question, but do you, in the ones that we can see right there, did the complaint come from any of those properties that are right there about the noise?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't answer that.
Okay.
You don't know?
I know.
He may know, but it might have been anonymous. I was just trying to get
I
a
know.
point of reference for distance.
I understand.
So they gave a complaint with no,
We don't reveal who it is unless it goes to court.
or unless they come,
If they come here and reveal themselves, then that's on them.
or did they write a letter or anything?
They
with
wrote a
their name on
letter,
it?
yes.
So we always saw them before, if they wrote a letter to us.
The complaint letters, if
The
they,
complaint come from your code enforcement or?
no,
to s-
it came from a citizen to our office.
And then you went and looked at it with code enforcement, or I guess I'm not getting why we didn't see it.
Yep, and then code enforcement went out. It was, this individual didn't want to be known. Usually the ones you see, they give us the permission to add those to the packets. This one is not. So the letter that came in went to our code enforcement. They went out there, observed it, staff got involved. We met with the landowners, talked about what possibilities we have as far as solutions for this. And the best solution we came up with right now to be able to maintain the operation is request a conditional use permit.
So one question, sorry, Chair.
Go ahead.
One question is, did they go talk to the Reavers so they could find solution themselves, or did they just complain to you guys?
As far as I know, they just complained to us.
That'll make no sense. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Okay. Going to the speaker request forms, the first one I have is from Barb Bollinger. Please state your name for the record.
I am Barb Bullinger.
Bollinger.
My address is 4990 North Elkville Road. So I'm just up the street from the Reber property is where my property attaches, and we've gotten a letter from the applicants. I'd like to say at this time that I'm all for giving them a conditional use permit for more than one reason. Number one, I live there, I go down that road every day. I don't notice any traffic problems whatsoever. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen one of their trucks even come out or go in on the road. The other thing is, I have a conditional use permit for my business, and I own Barb's Bookkeeping and Tax Service and run it off my property, which is just a little ways up on the hill. There are multiple companies out there that are running their businesses. Now, whether they have conditional use permits or not, I don't know. The property right next door to me has a company using their property to park semi-trailers, 5 and 6 of them at a time. I stopped them from using our driveway because they were ruining it. There is a property just up the hill from the Reber's property that is in and out of there constantly with a tow truck. Whether he is the driver or owner, I don't know. But I know he's in and out of there with a commercial vehicle. See it all the time. I don't see that the Reavers would cause any problems whatsoever. They're tidy. They've been there for a while. I don't see garbage flying around, anything. And I think they're working at being good neighbors. And that's all I have to say today.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions for Barb? No? Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker request form I have is Don Hubner.
Morning, my name is Don Hubner. I live at 5010 North Elkvale Road. It's just up the road from the Reavers. I'm satisfied. I mean, they do a good job of keeping that place clean. Everything's parked in a nice, neat line. I have a hard time believing that anybody can hear them trucks. They also pick up my garbage at my business and two of our businesses, and I don't even know they're there when they come in. Them trucks ain't that loud to carry to his closest neighbor. As far as light goes, trucks are down, everybody around him is up. I can't see, I think it's a bunch of hooey that somebody's complaining about lights in their window. And if you're in a house, you're not gonna hear them trucks. It'd be one thing if there's a jake break. Another thing, early in the morning, there is traffic coming from north, one after another. I mean, and some of them guys, there's one guy's got speakers, and morning, night, noon, when he goes by, you can hear him 3-4 blocks away. Everything he's done, I mean, it's gravelled neatly. Everything is nice, neat, and tidy. Up the road between him and me, there's 2 places there that are absolutely pigsties. And I called in on one of them, and nothing ever seems to happen. There's one guy's got 3 tractors. He's got maybe a quarter acre, not even that. A couple balers, a dump truck, all kinds of crap just piled everywhere, just poof. It's a real pit. And another guys, the more and more they get there, they just keep collecting crap and never clean the place up. He's done a fantastic job of keeping it clean, organized. Can't say a bad thing about it. Sometimes I get up in the morning and I've never heard them trucks go out the driveway, you know. So that's all I've got to say. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Hubner?
You aren't one of the businesses that have no CUP?
What?
Do you have a conditional use permit for your business?
We're in city limits, and yes, we have everything. Conditional use across from me there too, back in them days, and they actually cleaned it up pretty good here lately, so they done a good job, you know. They're directly across the street from me.
What business do you have?
We own Ace Steel and Recycling, we own Cow Country Equipment, we got another Ace Steel and Pier,
Nice.
Mobile Storage Rentals we own, so.
So you know what a business is supposed to look like.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ace Steel is always going to be a pigsty because it's a recycling center, and we're going across there. But I mean, we do a lot of good for the city and the county, because that's a place to get rid of your stuff. And we're moving back into a bowl, and we went through all this stuff for our other business, and we're going to put it in a car shredder, and something like that's going to take away a lot of that mess, you know. But I mean, it's a messy business by nature. I mean, it's all junk that comes in there, but you got to put it somewhere and you got to get rid of it. So there's a need for our type of business. So
Yes, sir. Thank you for answering that truthfully.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I only have those 2 speaker request forms. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on item number 10? Seeing none, the recommendation from staff is for approval of conditional use permit 1929 with 10 conditions, but I would note that there's only 8 listed.
Chair,
Yes.
Go ahead.
the landowner would like to speak.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Am I missing? Okay, go ahead, please state your name for the record.
Nancy Reber.
Chad Reber.
Morning.
Okay.
I don't know, do you want us to speak or just to, did you all receive this form, this packet that we put together?
We did,
So-
yes, that was in our
So when we
packet.
started all of this, we didn't necessarily even plan on having our business there, but with some family things, we did move it there because we felt that we thought that we were within guidelines. We didn't, I guess, understand that we had to file for this permit that we're doing today and go through this process. We thought that since we were limited ag, and within that was a place to store equipment, that we were okay. So we apologize for not taking the proper steps to do this before we moved our equipment. when we heard that there was a complaint about the light. We had just put in a brand new light above the shop so that when the guys do come in early, we're very cautious about being safe and making sure the trucks are running properly, that there's not grease or, maintenance issues that are going to get on the streets and whatnot. And so we felt that that would be helpful for the guys to be able to check their trucks properly because right now they didn't have that particular light. Once we realized it was a problem or a concern, we immediately shut that down. As far as any other noise that we can think of that would be an issue would be the beeping, which we understand because we have the tow truck next to us that is a 24-hour operations, and their lights and beepers are right next to us and wake us up all the time. So we understand that concern. We have worked very hard to limit those types of issues. As it was stated earlier, our trucks are down lower, so their lights are not an issue. We purposely, as you'll see even in the pictures that you saw, we back our trucks up when they park. So when they leave, they just pull out and go. Therefore, you don't have like like the garbage trucks do, the beeping noise. Typically, when trucks of that size are backing up, they have the beepers so that you can hear them and people know to be cautious of them backing up. So we're conscientious about that as well. We back our trucks up so when they leave, they don't have that noise. So it could be that that beeping noise is actually the tow truck guys, we don't know, but our trucks are not beeping or making those noises in the mornings.
Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you said something about item number 7. So they can't do the quiet hours be established. What is the solution so they can run this business? And based on the neighbors, it sounds like the other neighbors that this is not an issue.
Well, we could establish the quiet hours to be 10 PM to 3 AM or 3:30 AM, so they're not operating earlier than 3:30.
Or do you have to limit them?
We don't have to, but because that's what triggered all this, an official complaint, we wanted to address it.
I feel that the noise that they were hearing was the beepers backing up, and we've solved that issue.
If that's, if it was even us, I mean, we wanted to know if the neighbor asked the same question you guys did, why didn't he come to us? Because we wouldn't even be here. I mean, we would have took care of it, but they wouldn't release the name to us, or nobody would let us know who it was, and I don't know.
And Chair, I have a hard time changing someone's business hours to run a business off one complaint and then not having that person, and that's why I asked the question, not having a person go and find that solution. That way, that complaint could be taken care of. So
That's
for the
how we
quiet
felt, too.
hours, I would have a hard time not letting them run their business like they do over one complaint.
And we live on that property, and our grandson kind of stays with us quite a bit. So, I mean, I gotta deal with her, and she's worse than the neighbors, so I gotta try to keep them quiet. I mean, she has to have her sleep,
Well, and anytime we're woke up, like I said, it's not our truck, it's the tow truck next door, so
And we're not pointing fingers at him.
no, we're just saying that, and you can also hear the beepers even from
The truck stop,
the
whatever.
industry that's operating blocks away from us to the west. You can hear them oftentimes too, so, it is possible that maybe they thought it was us and it's not, I don't know.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
just out of curiosity, your zone limited ag, do you guys got a tractor on your property that you ever run?
It's in the picture right there.
You ever run it early in the morning?
No.
Okay. But you've never had a complaint about the sound for that well?
Well, we do if I do snow removal.
If we have to remove snow, I guess, in the
and that-
driveway, we would have to do that.
On a rough estimate, which is louder, your trucks or your tractor? And I'm only asking because I'm a rancher, I got a tractor, so I know how loud they can get.
I guess about the same. I don't know. It depends how old the tractor you got, I guess. I mean,
Okay.
The old
That's
guy up
for
the
the
street
road.
has that hit and miss, and that thing sounds pretty crazy. But, I mean, that's how old your tractor is and how noisy it is.
I don't,
Gotcha.
when I'm in the house, because he's the one that uses it, I don't really hear it.
But I've never had any complaints, PJ, for any other sounds on the property, just this one?
Correct.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to recommend approval of conditional use permit, with 9 conditions, removing the quiet hours be established. That'd be my motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second on item number 10. Further discussion on the issue.
I just have one. You said 9 versus 10, and I guess I missed. Were you deleting one of the 10?
Number 7, the quiet hours.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Seeing none, motion is for approval. Removing item number 7. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries, and Kathy abstained, correct?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brings
I
us to,
apologize, I have to go to another meeting. I'll be back right after that's done. Thank you.
thank you. Brings us to item 11.
Morning, Commissioners. Jason Dennison, County Planner. Agenda item number 11 is for Layout Plan LPL 1941. The applicant is Gordon Howie. He's also a landowner of one of the subject properties. The other landowner is Diana Foster. Surveyor is Long Branch Civil Engineering. The applicant, Gordon Howie, has applied for Layout Plan LPL 1941 to reconfigure interior lot lines of the existing subject properties. As it sits today, you can look on the slide, it's on your left, and the proposed lots are on the right. You can see the proposed interior lot line change on the right versus what it is today. Existing conditions, both properties are currently zoned low-density residential, which carries a 3-acre minimum. Both have special flood hazard area on the property. Both lots take access off of Antelope Creek via a 40-foot shared access easement. As it sits today, Lot 4 consists of 3.02 acres, contains a platted drain field supporting Lot 5. Lot 5 is 3.03 acres and also contains a platted access easement on the western portion of the property, kind of paralleling Rapid Creek there, to allow access from Lot 7 to Lot 8. Proposed lots 4R and 5R will continue to be zoned low-density residential area. Both will contain special flood hazard area now with a 40-foot wide platted access easement from Antelope Creek. As it's drawn on, if you can look on the slide on your right-hand side, below the text of 4R, there's a 40-foot wide platted access easement in place from Antelope Creek to allow access to Lot 5R, but it does not extend to Lot 5R, and that's noted as a condition of approval moving forward for this. Lot 4R will be 3.024 acres and continue to contain the platted drain field easement for Lot 5. It will also contain a 40-foot wide platted access easement on the western portion of the property. That's the one I spoke of that parallels Rapid Creek to allow access from Lot 7 to Lot 8. And it will also, this layout plan will also add a 47-foot by 91-foot access easement to be created. And that's going to allow property owners on the southern half of the, or the southern edge of the property on Lot 7 to access a barn on Lot 4R. The request was sent out for interdepartmental review. We did have comments come back from County Highway. They noted that floodplain limits need to be drawn on the included plan. Did note that that was missing, and it will be a condition of approval. They also noted that access or approach permits are required for all driveways need to be shared. And that will also be a condition of approval. For purposes of the layout plan, staff finds no significant issues with the applicant's request as it appears to be in harmony with existing lots and current land use in the area. Therefore, staff recommends approval of layout plan LPL 1941 with 6 conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Thank you. My only note was it looks to me like the access easement to Lot 5R is probably the biggest issue at this time. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I talked to the engineers, and they said that they're going to extend this this access easement to connect. You can see on the aerial on the left the current use, and that's what they're going to follow.
Okay.
They extend that.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? Seeing no further discussion, staff recommends approval of layout plan LPL 1941 with 6 conditions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to item number 12.
Good morning, Brittany Molitor. Item number 12 is ordinance amendment OA 1902 to amend section 205 General Agriculture District and section 212 Heavy Industrial District to renumber paragraphs and reclassify aggregate mining as a conditional use, to amend section 511 fees to set fees regarding mining permits, and to add section 320 mining operation to regulate aggregate mining. And this is to supersede section 507B mining permits of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. This ordinance section is basically to, like I said before, to regulate aggregate mining as a conditional use. And I was just going to talk to you, Rich, Mr. Chair. How did you want to go through it? Did you want to go line by line? Did you want to?
I think at this point, what we should do is you can finish the introduction to the changes and
Okay.
that, but I don't think that we need to go line by line. I think that we'll take it section by section and see if anyone has any changes to section 205. Then we'll go to 212, and then we'll go to 320, and we'll just take them in order.
Okay. This has been in front of the Planning Commission and in front of the Board of Commissioners in the past. There have been some changes to this. Some of the major changes are that we did add on the application and notice of hearing. We did add a notice of hearing for the Board of Commissioners meeting in addition to the Planning Commission meeting. Another item that was of significance of change, there was a review section for mining permits, or excuse me, a renewal section, and we actually changed that to a review section. No other conditional use permit that we have requires renewal. Most of them do require review. Staff did work with this and felt that because there is a revocation process, that requiring renewal was onerous for mining operators. And then the last one, we did change some of the requirements under the legal non-conforming use and the registrations. There are a couple other changes that staff would like to add in that section when we get to that section. So that's kind of the basic overview.
Okay.
So
what I'd like to do then is open it up for questions from the membership to staff for each of these sections. We'll then hear from the speaker request forms, and after that we'll return to us and make a recommendation from there. Any questions about that? Go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
Is this ordinance a product of the planning department or?
the
Wrote
planning
this.
department and the state's attorney's office.
Okay. So, okay.
And we did meet with industry individuals and other citizens that had been part of the committee in the past.
Sandy, did you have a question
No.
as well? Okay.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. The ordinance was originally drafted and passed by the board in, I believe it was March of 2017, was invalidated by the Supreme Court due to a notice of irregularity. Upon the Supreme Court decision, legal took a very close look at the draft, and essentially what you have before you is what was approved in March of 2017 with a few changes. Those changes are primarily supplemental definitions, cleaning up some language, but the substantive changes are primarily to address some legal issues involving due process of neighboring property owners. And as Ms. Molitor already stated, changing the renew process to review process. And as there is one change that we are proposing to the document that you've received, but again, we'll bring that to your attention when we reach that section.
Is that in section 320?
320P, yes.
Okay, thanks. So I guess, starting with, section 205, does anybody have any changes, or any questions for staff on 205? Okay. How about section 212? Okay. This is going quick, section 320. Any specific questions?
Chairman?
Go ahead, Kathy.
I do have a few throughout. Do you want me just to?
We'll go ahead and start. Yep.
Okay, and some of these are kind of a question, and others I stumbled a little bit on the wordage, and so I'm just going to make a couple suggestions here. But so on section E of 320, mining permit process and public notice requirements. So E, subsection 3, mining permit application review, B. And this is just, I kind of stumbled on this language here, the effect of the proposed operation upon private or public water quality or availability. And my suggestion really is perhaps, to consider just a slight reword and the effect of the proposed operation upon water quality or availability of private or public water supplies. Typically that's when you have private or public, you end it with like water supplies or, bodies of the state or something. And I think in this case it's water supplies. So just kind of a redo of that sentence, just a suggestion.
Okay.
Then, should I just keep going?
Yes.
Okay. So on G, mining permit application, down to D, so GD, and this is on V5, the Roman numeral 5, little 5. To me, the word when you use operational measures to limit or reduce these different things suggests that there's a problem with these different things. And so, and you've kind of you've already just sort of a priori established that there's a problem. And so I'm wondering if we couldn't change the words limit or reduce to the word manage. So operational measures to manage noise, dust, air contaminants, vibration, so on. So that it seems more of a neutral term.
What item are you on?
Where we are?
Under G, I think I'm on G.
Okay.
G2, okay, so G2D, little Roman numeral 5.
Page 9 of 20,
9 of 22.
page 9 of 22.
Yeah, it's the operational measures, it starts out.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Could you restate that, please?
Yeah, my suggestion is just rather than say limit or reduce, just substitute the word manage. And then on little Roman numeral 7, where it says measured or estimated depth to groundwater, I thought it might add some clarity to expand that sentence saying measured or estimated depth to groundwater within the permit limit, because permit limit is defined at the beginning, so that it would be more clear as to the targeted area. And I also have kind of just a reword suggestion for little Roman numeral 5 or 10 rather in that section. And it just at the beginning, the reclamation plan shall demonstrate that the site will be reclaimed to restore natural features or for agricultural use. And then just scratch as an agricultural site, just say for agricultural use, and then continue with soils that are comparable. And then, maybe this is my last one, but this is on section J, review, transfer, and expansion. J1, permits may be reviewed by the board to verify that conditions of approval are met. Mining permits may be reviewed for these three things. Is there, do you think there's a possibility or even a potential that you'd want to review the permit as a means to review the surety? You know, the amount or the holder of the surety or something? I mean, do you think that would ever be a reason for review when you want to take a look at the surety?
Well, I believe the surety is one of the conditions of approval that may be imposed by the planning director. So review under this section would apply to any of the conditions of approval, including surety.
Oh, I see. So that would be covered with A. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so then the last one, I think, is on section P, legal non-conforming use. Numeral 4, regulation for legal non-conforming use. Okay, and I may be mixed up on this, but when I look at the, this is under section, I have different pages, but this is under section G, numeral 4, number 4, where it talks about the condition for approval of the surety. It says that the application, anyway, it suggests to me that the responsibility for determining whether a surety is required is with the board rather than the planning director. Is that? And then back on this other one, it's still with the planning director. And I'm thinking, am I misreading this or?
Go. What item are you on? G?
G number 4.
G.
Or the board may
It's,
require
when I read that, it seemed to me that the board, rather than the planning director, shall determine the amount of surety or bond based upon industry standards.
Totally lost.
That's correct.
Then back on this other section, it still resides, that responsibility still resides with the
yes.
I can explain the distinction.
Okay.
You have your permitting process for conditional uses under 320. Subsection P is dealing with legal nonconforming uses that are not subject to the permitting process. And so they have a different review process.
Oh.
So that's why,
Why?
see, it's the planning commission under subsection P, because the planning commission is will be the deciding body on legal nonconforming uses subject to an appeal.
Yep,
So that's a distinction. And since we're here on section P, I think this might be a good opportunity to explain some changes that legal and staff are recommending. We moved, the first two paragraphs were moved just from the body up to an introduction with one addition. In that second paragraph, we've added excavation activities with a previously issued Pennington County mining permit are excluded from this registration requirement. The reason for that is this. We do have mining operations that have existing mining permits. Those existing mining permits already define that mining activity, which is really the purpose behind this legal nonconforming registration. We have a few operations, mining operations, that are active and active under a construction permit, do not have a mining permit. And so we want to be able to define the parameters of that activity. So that's why we're requiring this legal nonconforming registration. So there's really no point for anyone who in fact has a mining license under 507B, or I should say a mining permit, county mining permit, to have to register. So we added that particular line. We also just cleaned up some formatting. And then under 5 of that same section, we wanted to make it very clear that whether you consider yourself legal nonconforming with a mining permit under 507B, everyone is subject to the operational requirements. So we changed the language to say excavation activities ongoing prior to the enactment of Section 320 must comply with those general operation requirements. We wanted to make that very clear that no one is excluded from those requirements. And so those are the only proposed changes to what have been presented to the Planning Commission. And if I might, Ms. Johnson, you had a comment, your original comment, and I failed to make note of your proposed change under E. I believe it was E3. It was your first.
Oh, that just,
comment.
it's, under, yeah, E3B.
B.
It just, it's just a suggested reword, not a big thing necessarily, but the effect of the proposed operation upon, and then move private and public, but so upon water quality or availability of private and public water supplies.
I was to say private or, since or is defined as it can be a, we have some Supreme Court, I have a Supreme Court case that's actually yet to be decided dealing with the definition of and or.
Okay.
So I actually included a definition of and means both are required, or means one or all. So we were very careful when we went back through this document to use or and appropriately. So I'd recommend when you, at the end of that, to say of private or public.
Right, and that's the words that are here, and I guess I just assumed, we just move that, those three words, private or public, kind of toward the end of the sentence.
Water
Operation
sources.
upon water quality or availability of private or public water supplies.
Supply. Okay, very good.
Just a suggestion.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just have one other question, since you're up here, but, on your email to us, Michelle?
Yes.
You noted at the very end, in addition, we have received a question from the public regarding potential water issues presented by mining, and the planning staff is inquiring into the science behind the distances required for the purpose of well testing and groundwater monitoring. Was anything, did anything come out of that person?
That question was directed more toward water supply versus contamination. I think there's a distinction between the threat aggregate mining may pose to water supplies versus mineral mining. And I don't know if Ms. Molitor received any further information. It is my understanding in reaching out to a few mining experts that 1,500 was created with the idea that if you're going to have a depletion in the water source, you're going to see that at the wells closer to the mining operation. They're going to be impacted first before anything beyond the 1,500 feet. But I think that was the concern that was voiced by private citizen.
Okay, and so there's no more action on that?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Any further questions from staff? Okay. We have a few speaker request forms here. The first one is James Dean from Hill City. And again, please state your name for the record into the
Hello, James Dean. Represent my own company, Dakota Stone, small mining company here in the hills. A couple of things that bother me a little bit. I guess one of them is the new application cost. I've got several prospects that I'm looking at right now that I'm probably not going to do, and they involve, small explorations to try and develop new products. Between that and a couple other things, it just kind of I mean, it kind of evolves into almost a no-go on some projects. And also for possible, I'm almost done, but for new people, small mining people that maybe would like to do something, that seems a little bit extreme. I know you can tear up 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 acres in the Pennington County for a housing development for $250. And, even if you reduce it, and I understand for large projects, you need more money because you got a lot of things you have to do. But my suggestion is to make like the state does, a small scale mine permit and large scale mine permit would basically just say, okay, anything under 3 acres or 2.5 acres would be a small scale. It could be like $500 because there's a lot less. I'm not sure where you came up with the $2,500, but that would be a suggestion that would probably help out maybe small miners in the future. And then another question I had was, you basically to do any mining in Pennington County, do I understand you have to have a conditional use no matter where you are? Or is there any place where it's not, where it's allowable without a conditional use permit?
I'll let Michelle or Brittany answer that question.
It would be a conditional use permit.
No matter what?
No matter
Anywhere
what.
in the whole
Correct.
county?
Correct.
Okay. That includes Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service?
Yes, I believe so. And that would be dictated upon the amount of material that's being used or being moved, is that correct? 100 cubic yards.
Yeah, okay. And then in that same, so I guess I'd like to know what you mean by renewal of a conditional use. I can understand looking at something if you're gonna expand or if you're changing your operation, but I guess I'd like to have maybe a little bit more of a clearer understanding over what a conditional use renewal is.
Brittany, I'll have you answer that as well.
That was in the previous 320 and we actually removed that.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a review process
Okay.
instead of a renewal process.
Okay, so then it'll just be a review on a change then, or?
It depends on the conditions. It may be reviewed every 5 years, 10 years, or upon complaint basis.
Okay, I thank you. I think that's all I had.
Okay. I don't know the answer to your question regarding how the rates got established. Is there any background on that, Brittany, that you can speak to as far as the cost of a new application?
Those were similar to what Lawrence County requires, and theirs is a conditional use permit. When staff did the other reports under 320, the staff reports were significantly larger than they are under the other because of the amount of criteria and the amount of conditions that we have to go through. I think you're looking at 6 to 8 pages versus 50 to 60 pages with all of the research and the information that you have to find under 320 for the new permit.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Travis.
So what about a small operation? I mean, do small operations require that amount of time as well? I mean, I'm just trying to.
The way that it's written right now, yes, it would. When we had it in committee, it wasn't separated out between small and large.
Because that was I circled that one for a discussion today because I was like $2,500. That's like tenfold over from previous. And so that's that jumped up at me right there pretty quick.
Well, then there's also costs of the special use permit and a lot of other costs. And a lot of the work is done prior to getting to the county from the state and the Forest Service. For me, most of my stuff is on the Forest Service, so there's already a huge amount of available information for them to use on a smaller scale. But just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any further questions for Mr. Dean? Okay. The next, I have two other speaker request forms. Next one is Brian Tiedemann. You don't need to speak. Okay. Danielle. Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak to this issue? Sir, are you here to speak on this item? Later on? All right, thank you. So with that, staff is recommending approval of ordinance amendment 19-02. Is there any further discussion before we move forward on the changes? Do we have concerns with any of the changes that are stated? I want to make sure that all the items get discussed here before moving forward. Go ahead, Sandy. Did you have something?
No.
Okay.
Are you looking for a motion?
If there's no further discussion, then I am looking for a motion. Staff recommends approval of ordinance amendment 19-02.
Mr. Chairman? Oh, go ahead.
And we would, Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office, we have no objections to Ms. Johnson's proposed changes in language, and we would just request that any motion approval include those changes as well as the changes to subsection P that staff is recommending today.
Understood. Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve it as just discussed, that
So-
it would include Kathy Johnson's changes and the planning department's changes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on the item. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
So we have
Do we not
do a
have a
roll call?
quorum?
You do. You have quorum.
4 and 1 opposed. Item carries. Brings us to item 13.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick clarification, if you don't mind, Michelle. And I was trying to read this through. That's kind of why I hadn't made up my mind yet. But you said this is a proposed change, and so maybe unless my book is outdated, but the binder that I have from PJ, Section D, we already had it in there for 2,500. So am I missing something? I was trying to reconcile page 22 of 22, Section 511, D, mining permits 250. You cross that out and the section 1, 2, and 3. Well, I don't even see that in the binder that I have from the county already. So unless I have a bad printing, I don't even see why we're asking
You
to
may
remove that.
have, if you recall, 320 was effective until the Supreme Court invalidated it. So you perhaps have an old copy.
Did your book just have the old copy in it that was invalidated?
Well, yeah. Well, I wonder. This is what I was given by PJ, but like my D here has it exactly like you have it here without that mining. It says mining permit. There's no 250 fee on there. So that's why I was sitting there trying to wrap my head around this, wondering what I'm looking at. So I was like, wait a minute.
Well, the section that was invalidated because that under fees, 511 wasn't thrown out.
Okay.
It could be that when the ordinance 1702, I believe it was invalidated, that meant that the ordinance is in fact prior to that particular ordinance. We're now back in play, and I believe you probably got a version that didn't get that corrected.
Okay. So that's why I was like, well, hold on. I'm trying to really reconcile that in my mind, but I was like, well, I'll just vote no at this point because I didn't see how it linked right, but that makes sense.
We found a couple similar issues elsewhere that we corrected within the current ordinance.
Okay.
Now we're on item 13.
I was confused.
Cody Stack, Environmental Planner. The following items have been placed on the construction permit agenda to be heard for public comment, will not be voted on by the Planning Commission. Any Planning Commissioner, staff member, or audience member may comment on any of the items. Comments received will be considered by the Planning Director, who will make the final decision on the construction permit. Item 13 is construction permit 1917. It's the applicant's Pete Lean and Sons. It's to grade the land associated with the expansion of a sand and gravel mine operation. The zoning is general ag. This was routed around for every department comments. There wasn't really anything major that came back. The only major thing that came back was that the county natural resources director recommended that the applicant use an integrated noxious weed plan for existing noxious weeds on the property, and that all state and locally declared noxious weeds must be treated before seed and set as per state law. There is floodplain on the property. The applicant did submit a floodplain development permit that was approved. This construction permit goes along with the mining permit. I believe it was item number 8. Earlier that was approved. It's for the Birdsaw mine, sand and gravel mine in Wasta. They have their current mining license 83-100. The property contains vegetated berms that contains the site, and that the grading and the mining for the proposed on the property will create detention ponds that will also hold water. So staff's recommending that the planning director approve construction permit 1917 with 10 conditions.
Thank you. Is there any comments or discussion from staff or from membership on this item? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, moving to item 14.
Good morning, Brittany Molitor. Item 14 is a construction permit, CP 1918, to build a road, to grade and level an area for building sites, and to remove gypsum to be hauled off. The applicant, Cody Schad, has requested a construction permit to build access roads to the rear of the property, to excavate and haul off large amounts of gypsum to level and grade areas for construction of shop buildings. As the property exists today, it's Lot 3R Marvin subdivision. It is zone limited agriculture district. It consists of 40 acres. There are easements on the property for gas lines and power lines. This has been routed to the utility companies. We did not receive any comments back. I have spoken with the applicant. He is aware of those easements on the property. The lot does contain a single family residence that was built in 1982. There is an on-site wastewater treatment system, several tool sheds, and a shop building. Access is currently off Marvin Road, which is platted as of right-of-way. Staff did confirm with County Highway that they do not maintain this road, and this road is not within a road district. Staff did route this through the interdepartmental review process. Only one item of concern came back. That was from the city of Rapid City, that a haul road agreement may be required to haul the gypsum on city roads. Staff has spoken with the applicant. The applicant is working with the city of Rapid City to see if that haul road agreement is required. Staff did do a site visit out there. Some dirt work had begun. Staff did speak with the applicant. They are just going to not grade out any more of the area until this construction permit is approved by the planning director, and just stabilize the site. He did pay the penalty fee for that. And then also one other thing is with the excavation of that gypsum being hauled off, it would require a mining permit. The applicant has applied for a mining permit that will be heard at the December 2nd Planning Commission meeting. So staff is recommending that the planning director approve construction permit with 10 conditions.
Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions? This seems to follow suit along several items that we've heard here in the past few years, where someone starts something and then doesn't really have all of the paperwork up front, and then sometimes the landowner understands what needs to be done and comes into compliance, and others don't. Are you comfortable with proceeding with this, and have they, I guess, responded to all the requests that the county has asked them to do?
Yes, we did go out on the site visit. We spoke with them. They did quit. They were just berming the area. They were putting up the erosion sediment control and things.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, Seeing,
I just have a question.
go ahead, Jim.
Removing this gypsum. So this is sort of a mining operation. So what is he gonna do with this gypsum? Is it for some construction project? Is it a short-term thing? Is he gonna go into the gypsum extraction business, or do you know?
No, GCC Dakota is hauling it off
And,
and utilizing it. It's just that it's at the site, so when he's grading off the site,
oh,
typically they would
it's
use.
simply for removal is what you're saying?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
And because of the literal interpretation of our ordinance, if you extract that 100
Right,
cubic yards,
okay.
it requires a mining permit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Seeing none, item 15, County Board Report.
PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. Item 15, the Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendation from the November 12th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. In addition, the appeal of Conditional Use Permit 1927 from Marilyn and Greg Bolt, an update. This was to allow an existing single-family residence to be used as a bed and breakfast in a low-density residential district. The item was appealed and heard by the board on November 19th, and the board upheld the Planning Commission's decision of approval for CUP 1927.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
PJ, can you kind of remind me which one that one was?
Let's see if I can get you a picture, actually. Quick. I'll have to go back a little bit. Too far back.
Yeah, who appealed it?
One of the neighbors across the street. So this was from Marilyn and, hold on a second here, Marilyn and Greg Bolt, and they wanted to do a bed and breakfast on the subject property. And then use the existing other residents as a guest house so that they could operate it and live there at the same time. So this was the complaint that came in from Kathy Cook, who wanted the letter to stand on its own.
I see.
And the commissioners, essentially, so this is the subject property right here. And this is the complainant, one of the complainant's properties. They own quite a bit up there.
Which property? Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
I can barely see the red.
Oh, okay, let me see if I can. So right there, that's the complainant's property. A different complaint than kind of the complaint you heard earlier today. What they were complaining mainly about was people walking across Silver Mountain Road to utilize the pool, which is right here on the property across the street, which is owned by the applicant's daughter. Because the complainant was out of town, lives out of town, there's no residence on the property, and because there was also a letter written that they would not allow people to use the pool, the commissioners upheld the Planning Commission's decision.
Okay.
That help?
And we approved that?
You did.
I wasn't here, so it doesn't, but, yeah.
Okay. Next, items from the public. Seeing no folks from the public in the audience. Items from staff, item 17.
Just a couple. First, of comprehensive plan meetings. The first one will be December 4th at 9 a.m. And the second scheduled is going to be December 18th, also starting at 9 a.m. That's the only two meetings we know of so far.
Okay.
Chair.
Go ahead.
And so these meetings, they're going to be noticed to the public, and they'll be here in this room,
Correct.
and hopefully public will come, because this is the time for them to voice any comments that they have on the proposed plan.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
our
these are, yep,
comprehensive
and
But
these meetings are, I'm sorry.
These meetings are the commissioners, not us.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And these are also not regularly scheduled meetings for the board. These are special meetings. They're planning on going, I think, a minimum of, at least 4 hours from what I understand. So maybe even longer.
Was there any public comment that came forward when the board had their regularly scheduled briefing from, their regular meeting?
When they had the presentation from Rick from
Right,
Matrix, there was an individual that came up, and what he was speaking about was designating highways for scenic byways. But it was on reservation land, and it wasn't on reservation land, but it was down by scenic. And what he didn't know was that road that he was talking about had already been recommended as a scenic byway in the comprehensive plan.
I see.
Next item.
We held first round interviews for Planner 2. We have also found a candidate after the first round. We were planning on 2. That job offer has been offered. And so there are a couple individuals that were interviewed that may actually be appropriate for other jobs in the county. So we're going to be passing that information on to them.
Okay. Next item.
Next item, a few potlucks coming up. So on Monday, December 2nd is the Planning Commission and the Board and Planning Department potluck. So I know Christina and Dwayne have reached out to you, and thank you for everybody who has signed up. And so it's scheduled around 11:30. Usually, we're not sure when the board meetings or the Planning Commission meeting is going to end that day, but we're planning around 11:30.
Okay, the next one, the 6th.
Next one is a countywide potluck, same week, but on Friday. This one has some competitions and contests and ugly sweater contests, ugly outfit contests, stuff like that, door prizes. That one, I believe, also goes from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. I checked this year. Usually it's not something that we've talked to the commission about, but I was given permission this year to offer it to the Planning Commission if you'd like to be there. Same type of rules. If you would like to attend, they ask that you bring something, and I can send out the signups if you're interested.
Why don't we have prizes?
We could. I would. Would you like to chair that committee?
Where's the county potluck held?
That's in the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, the bigger,
The room
bigger
down
room.
there?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm out of town that day.
Okay.
I'll be in July.
Item E.
Item E, just a reminder that Monday, December 16th Planning Commission meeting starts at 2 p.m., not 9 a.m. First meeting in December is at 9, second meeting is at 2. So second, 2, kind of think of it that way. And then I'll speak to Commissioner Lassiter afterwards. So that's all.
Okay.
Chairman?
Item number 18.
I may have, excuse me, but I may have already said this, but I will not be at the December 16th meeting.
And that's for item 18, correct?
And Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
depending on how long that meeting goes, I might have to leave early. I do have a meeting at 5 o'clock in the evening. I hope we don't go that long because it starts at 2.
Usually
but
this
just
time
in
of year, they
case,
don't go that long.
But just in case, I figured I'd give you a heads up that I already know I have a meeting that evening.
Okay. And I will confirm that I do have jury duty in the month of December, so I'll just keep everyone informed as possible as soon as I know when I call in. Any other items from the membership on item 18? Seeing none, item 19, adjournment. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We're adjourned.